Hello and welcome to the Control Podcast on iCode Media. Today, I had a great conversation with my friends Alana, Jim, and John. We talked about supplements. Specifically, it is Global Omega-3 Day. And what I wanted to do is kind of dive a little bit deeper into omega-3s. They're on the label that the label is saying that they are going to be stable on the shelf and stable once opened. Both practical tips, certifications, and other resources that they can use that can be helpful to make sure that they know what they're taking is actually what they're supposed to be taking. So please enjoy our conversation. So one of the biggest challenges today is that the market space is flooded with a lot of confusion with it when it comes to supplements. So it's not that all supplements aren't regulated, but it's that because there is less regulation on supplementation than, say, pharmaceutical grade medications, then patients are forced with this choice of looking at an entire wall of items. And physicians are forced with trying to articulate the difference between, say, a wall of items where something might be $10 and something might be $50, how those differences or why those differences are important.
You know, something might cost a lot more, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's of higher quality. You've got to look to see if things have been tested from outside laboratories, for example, as there is certain certification of quality testings that there is.
Tell me a little bit more about GOED.
Yeah, we're a trade organization. Well, our reason of being really is to make sure that the EPA and DHA omega-3 industry, from fisheries all the way to finished products, are of high quality and are something that consumers, the end users, can take and trust. And so we feel like we set the bar in terms of standards of quality and ethics that a GOED member company, if they want to join us, you know, we will take a look at their specs basically and make sure that they can adhere to these standards of quality and ethics. And like I said, we will do randomized testing every year. We can't test every single SKU of every single brand, every product, but we do randomized testing.
Do you test products that are not like of members currently?
No, so we're not a quality testing organization. We set the standard, and we want to make sure that our members adhere to these standards of quality and ethics. And we will do that, like I said, that randomized testing, and we will let the companies know if anything is outside of our standard. And that's where I think things like Supplement Certified come in, and that's why we make such good partners.
That's great. So that helps me kind of understand the difference between what you're doing and what Supplement Certified is doing. So John, you know, we talked about that before, but that's been a while since we talked about Supplement Certified. So tell me, you know, with Supplement Certified, what's your vision? What's the role that you see Supplement Certified playing in the omega-3 realm?
Yeah, it's nice, and I agree with Ilana, you know, that one of the, you know, what GOED does is crucially important, right? It's a very good, you know, starting point for me to say, to help organizations get access to good quality omega. And just like, you know, you heard today, it's very difficult for GOED to police and measure and test everything thereafter, because there's so much that can happen after the omegas are made available to whatever company, to encapsulate, to market, to package and sell, and to mine, essentially. So I see that Supplement Certified has that complementary role, and working for the same organizations that GOED, that Alana's organization, work with. I believe that the doctor and their patients, or the consumer, you know, should be able to get access to what they believe they're buying. And that's really important to me. And I did that because in a clinical trial, as you know, I got funny results based on what we measured in the blood, and we never thought for a second that the supplement could be wrong, because just like the consumer and the patient, I made an assumption that everything was good until I measured it.
This brings up a point, John. We're talking about counterfeit supplements as well, of the idea of making sure that it's stable on the shelf for as long as it's going to be stable. It's going to have the impact that they claim to have based on the labeling.
And we have been trying to bring more attention is voluntarily. I mean, there's nobody forcing them to adhere to these standards. I should emphasize too that GOED, it's not just brands that we work with. We're all along the supply chain. We need to look at that final product, because to John's point, there's so many things further down the pipeline that could happen that would change things, some adulterations or some other ingredients that could be added, that we can't stand behind our logo until we take a look at that company, that brand.
Recently, there's been a flood of emails on the people that I'm connected with about kind of counterfeits. What's your experience with the difference between uncovering a counterfeit carotenoid versus uncovering a counterfeit omega-3? What types of things might I be looking for?
Well, yeah, we haven't here at MacuHealth experienced any of the omega-3 issues. When we're talking about omega-3s in general, this discussion is so important, and the work that Supplement Certified is doing, GOED certainly. I'm a scientist, and so when we see clear results from really well-controlled trials that characterize the nutrients, in this case, say DHA, EPA, and then you get maybe companies or, if there's anything that muddies data, that makes it obfuscates things, it is probably the most frustrating thing to me, and I'm sure to, Professor Nolan as well. And then we see news reports come out and say, well, this causes heart disease. It turns out that, folks are, taking supplements that contain, maybe very low levels of these nutrients and very high levels of, saturated fats and impurities. It worries me because it breaks the trust in science. And, as a scientist, of course, that's very personal to me. We take it very seriously, certainly here at MacuHealth, ensuring that everything is right on the button with regard to, our specs and the nutrients and the quality, the stability. We're working towards, ensuring public trust. And I think that's probably the most important aspect of all of this.
There's a really important point here that we must protect, and that is the consumer. But one key point here is that the consumer, my mother, for example, is paying for a supplement that she's entitled to get what the company is telling her they're selling. And that's why Supplement Certified exists. The challenge we have is that about companies that join the likes of GOED and Supplement Certified, we're asking them to self-regulate. So the movement and the change in this regard is to look at organizations that are part of GOED and Supplement Certified that are working to do the right thing, to self-regulate in an unregulated environment. So what Supplement Certified can do is help the company do the right thing. And that's why we exist, and that's why this is important to me. The biggest challenge is now regulatory within that space to make sure companies are supported to do the right thing.
Because the reality is that because the Wild West exists in supplementation, it can be easy as a physician, it can be easy as a clinician to say, well, just try it. And so when you think about like the types of things, analyze these supplements, make sure that there's what's in them is what we say is in them. So that's the way it works, is right. I would submit to you, you would say, we're going to analyze this, and if it meets our standards, you're going to get the stamp of approval. Tell me about Supplement Certified's process again.
It's a process, actually, Chris, which has evolved in a very positive way by good collaboration with organizations, premium organizations. That's every time they produce their lot, they send it to us. So every time they encapsulate their product and get it ready to go, there's a sample sent to us. It's measured. And the first thing it does that I think is very important is it distinguishes the components of the omega-3 fatty acids. So we break it down for the DHA and EPA because being able to measure those is important. So for me, it's much better to do that than just looking at total omega-3 fatty acid. One of the things we see in our own analysis is that more often than not, if a company is to fail on its label claim, it'll fail on EPA and not DHA. They tend to have enough DHA, and we're looking into why that is. So we absolutely measure that, and we distinguish between the different types of omega. And then the second question it does is it looks at it puts these supplements on a stability program, which means that, for example, if a product is providing the patient with a 90-day supply, does that product stay stable over those 90 days? Because there's a lot can happen with oxidation. This is much more of an issue with carotenoids, but it can be an issue as well with omega-3 fatty acids and the storage of same. And that And the third and final piece of work that Supplement Certified does for its partner company is a shelf life experiment, which is every company will, with their encapsulator, agree on an expiry date. And a little bit of that, based on my research, is finger in the air stuff. Let's pick 2 years. I see Alana laughing because it really is. It's like, so we help companies understand their shelf life and validate their shelf life. And, Jim Stringham from MacuHealth, this is the type of program that MacuHealth have put themselves on. And Supplement Certified are proud to have that partnership, but we also have partners with competitors to MacuHealth. So there are companies who see the value, Chris, in getting the data so that they can work better with their supplements and manage even the encapsulation bit better. But they also then feel confident communicating to the likes of yourself and your patients. And that's what's unique about Supplement Certified. We have now patented processes in terms of how we do that. Our laboratory, it's the whole system and protocols we use are ISO 17025 approved for that analysis. So it's totally independent and it is valid and accurate.
When new companies come onto the market, do you find them developing the product first and then coming to you and then trying to adjust it based on your recommendations? Do they develop the product, put it out, market it, and then say, hey, what do you think about this? How does that usually work?
They typically develop the product first, and then if they don't like the answer, we've worked with companies that have really not delivering on what those bioactives should be, but that company is going to make the changes.
Okay, so we've gone through all this work. It's really important to validate what we're saying. The product is what the label says it is. It will be stable after it's opened, and it will have some shelf life. How do we as physicians educate the public about this? And then what specifically are organizations like GOED doing to make the public aware of these sort of claims, as well as Supplement Certified? So Alana, go ahead. I'll let you go first.
So what we have actually is we have an infographic that talks about or explains to the consumer things to look for if you, or how to store and keep your supplements, safe.
What about the Supplement Certified? And from a MacuHealth standpoint, so Jim, MacuHealth standpoint, John, as a Supplement Certified standpoint, what do you do to try to make the public aware of what you're doing?
So yeah, I'll start, John. I mean, from MacuHealth's perspective, and again, coming from science, the vast majority of my career have been in academia, and come on as the chief scientific officer for MacuHealth, and my assumption coming into industry was that they're able to produce the supplements. It's got what it says it's got in it, and it's going to have the same effects as what we see in science. And that would be brilliant if that were the case. And certainly, we ensure that. And, a big part of this is Supplement Certified, making sure if something's not quite right, we redo it. It's expensive, but it's worth it. Every penny of it is worth it. When it comes to doctors and patients, that relationship should involve, as a level of respect that is like, okay, well, Dr. Wolf said, this is probably the best thing for me to take, the best one. I know that I can go down the street and get, something that's quite a bit cheaper, but really, as Professor Nolan is kind of famous for saying, the most expensive supplement that you can take is one that doesn't work. It doesn't do anything, or worse, it hurts you. And, there's been independent analysis by, a group out of Harvard that shows, in top selling fish oil supplements, these, excessive saturated fats and oxidized lipids, oxidative LDL, which is a marker for heart disease. You don't want to put that stuff in your body. And so I guess the cautionary tale here is, and why it's so great that we've gathered to discuss this here is really, like John said, for consumer protection. I mean, ultimately, it's the consumer that trusts. We want consumers to trust the science. We want consumers to trust doctors and trust that when they're putting their money into something, that it's going to do what they saw on the news, or maybe their friend told them, they read a scientific article and said, well, look, this is having a lot of benefit. we don't want to dupe anybody. I mean, and I fear that sometimes, that's happening. And so this process of third-party testing and reassurance is really going to prevent that kind of thing from happening.
And we know the companies can do it. And we know the companies can and have been able to improve their formulations. And we know that that's going to make that company more successful because the product's going to work better, the consumer is going to be happier, and what we want is to kind of build upon the great work that's happening with GOED and its members. We want these formulas to be created in a way that when we have this logo, that's the logo. And this is, there can be other certification programs, but that type of logo, that it means something to all of us. And that doesn't happen easily, Chris. It's not just a logo that we stick on a box. There's a whole wonderful partnership, relationship that's built between the scientists that supplement certified, that process, and the companies that want to really optimize what they're doing for their business. And what business wouldn't want to do that? So we're really excited about, all of these wonderful partnerships and where they're going and what this represents. And we've seen its success already. We've just started a program called the Label Study, which is a full PhD program. We have all the quantitative work done, which is showing the extent of supplements that fail on their label claim, and supplements, some of the powder-based supplements will just degrade so quickly that they fall off the cliff. So there's a lot of data that we have there. But another important piece of research is what we call qualitative research. And I'm working with a scientist, Dr. Anne Graham, who's specialist in that area, and we're working with the consumer. And they're out in the field already talking to patients about their trust on label. It's unbelievable what we're learning already about how the consumer has so much confidence and belief in the label. And imagine if you were to tell that consumer that there might be issues, that the label is not standing up. And then when we speak to the companies, and this will be part of the research, why it's important to the companies, again, back to Alana's point, companies with good ethics, which is your classic definition of companies that join GOED. They want to have access to the right stuff. They want to get the information to do the proper testing. And we just see ourselves as an organization that's part of that and will complement that and make the supplement industry a really more efficient industry. Good science with particular formulas that are sourced in a certain way, that are formulated in a certain way, that are given over a period of time at a certain dose. So that's exact science. And if you're a really good company, you get access to that exact science. And then the other piece is that you deliver on what that formulation should be.